So I wanted to make a video on my opinion of Resident Evil Village and whether or not you should buy it. I am a little bit late to the party on this one, but I took my time and played through the game and I have formed an opinion about it. But I want it to be as constructive as possible. So I'm going to note down the good and the bad points and summarize it all at the end. And first of all, I'll probably go through the bad points, and then later I will express the good things about the game and give my overall opinion. So the first bad point I'm going to make is that the game is supposed to be Romanian, but everybody is American. I mean, we have the currency, we have the traditional dishes, and we even have the perfect backdrop. So why does everybody have an American accent when the game is supposed to be set in Romania? I can understand the Winters family and Chris being American, but shouldn't Lady Dimitrescu, Heisenberg and co be, well, Romanian? I thought I got my wires crossed about the game being set in Romania in my older videos, and I panicked thinking I had actually misinformed everybody by saying it was set in Romania. But I was actually right, it is set in Romania, it's just that all the cast is American for some reason. I don't know why the producers decided to do that, but they did, and I think the game could have benefited from some diversity in the cast. That was one of the most jarring things for me when I started playing, is that no one had a Romanian accent. The second bad point, and this is quite a killer for me, is that unlike its predecessor Resident Evil 7, this installment is just not that scary. A lot of the jump scares were very predictable and felt scripted. The environment itself didn't feel that threatening either, and I have to say that neither did the boss fights. Something felt off when I was running around the castle and Lady Dimitrescu was following me. Like, she couldn't keep up with me, she was very clunky and slow, and she was very easy to escape from. I think Moreau and the baby monster were more grotesque than scary, and I actually felt myself feeling sorry for Moreau at some points in the story. It doesn't mean to say that none of the bosses were scary though. I think the creepiest of all of them was the Angie doll. That bitch is just pure nightmare fuel. And I think one of the reasons that Resident Evil 7 has a greater fear factor for me is because the Bakers are familiar in the way that they are just an average family and everyone can relate to that on some level. That in itself sets a precedent for psychological mind games. My third and final bad point, anyway, is that the boss fights are just not that challenging. Like I said earlier about being followed by Lady Dimitrescu, when it came to the boss fights, all you had to do was throw explosives until they were dead. In particular, the Heisenberg fight felt kind of scripted, and it didn't require you to think tactically about what you were doing. All you did was spray the machine gun and fire the RPG, and once it had recharged, you just kept doing it until he was defeated. Lady Dimitrescu's daughters were also too repetitive. All three of them had the same animation when you got caught by them. I could be nitpicking at this, but I think I would have preferred it if they just had some slight differences. And I'm probably the only one who thinks this, but I just couldn't tell the difference between the three of them, like I didn't know who was who. So that was my opinion on the daughters anyway. I just wish they were a little bit different from each other. And I'm also really surprised that they didn't play a bigger part in the game, because they were a really big part of the trailers and even the demos, so that was quite surprising to me. So now the bad points are out of the way, we can get on with the good points of the game. The visual and audio appeal of this game is phenomenal. Like, you can't deny how beautiful this game is. When you first enter the village after crawling through them woods and you first step out and you're greeted with this view, you almost feel like you are there in person and as though you want to hang out for a little bit just to take it all in. And then when you start making your way through the village, you are walking in amongst houses that feel real and almost like the occupants have only just left and they'll be back in a bit. The interior of the castle looks realistic as well, and the way the light reflects off certain surfaces and the textures on the paintings or the intricate carvings on the walls, it feels as though you're spending your Sunday in a National Trust site. The ambient sound effects in the game, when there are no enemies around, are really chill, and you could almost pass this off as ASMR. And when an enemy does come to ruin your Sunday outing, you can tell where they are just by the sound. And the gun sounds, they're okay. You can tell what type of gun you're firing at least. I'm not a ballistics expert at all. I'm just comparing the gun sounds to games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which are quite well known for having realistic gun sounds. Whilst there are no levels per se, it does have different themed areas, from the working nature of the village to the beauty of the castle to dungeons and mines. Each area is categorically different from the last one, and the transition into each area feels well done and it's not too jarring. Each of these areas are presided over by a lord, and each of these lords has their own unique traits and personalities. And I think the developers did a really good job of incorporating these traits and personalities into these areas that you're going to be exploring. Just as a heads up, there could be some spoilers in this part of the video if you haven't played the game yet, and I will try my best not to spoil it. But I felt like Ethan had a bit more development than he did in Resident Evil 7, although I still found the voice acting from him kind of mediocre. Regardless, he had development and he felt a bit more personable and relatable than he did in Resident Evil 7. The story, despite being rushed and predictable at the end, is a moving conclusion, and it does a good job at bringing an end to a certain character's story arc. And it leaves the ending open to the possibility of DLC or even a future installment to this series. It was also good to see some characters from Resident Evil 7 making a comeback, and there was a lot of references tying Resident Evil 7 and 8 together, which did help express the fact that Resident Evil 8 is actually a follow-on from Resident Evil 7, and it is a conclusion to a story arc, as I mentioned earlier. I'll add this good point as, well, I suppose it's kind of a bonus, but I have to mention it because it is one of my favourite parts of the game, and that is the introduction and the ending, which is the fairy tale of Village of Shadows. It is honestly the best animation, introduction, ending to a game I've ever seen, and I can't imagine the amount of work and expertise and time that went into creating the visuals just for this short story alone. So, in conclusion, would I recommend you pay full price for this game? I did pay full price for the game, and I would have to say that I wouldn't pay full price for it again. And honestly, I would recommend that you wait for a sale if you are thinking of buying it. It has its strong points and its weaknesses, and it is important to note that I am drawn towards the Resident Evil series because of the scariness and the puzzles and the challenges that the series provides. Resident Evil Village does have these elements, but it doesn't get the balance quite right, and it feels as though all three of these elements were watered down to try and fit into a 10-hour game. Some parts of it was scary, but I wasn't on the edge of my seat or anything, and a lot of the scares were scripted, and it felt a bit forced. I think if I had to rate this game out of 10, I would probably give it a 6.5. It was good, but just not the best. And now that I've finished it, I don't think I'm going to play it again. Saying that, it is a Resident Evil game, and for that reason I am going to be a bit biased because I am a fan of the franchise. The remakes and Resident Evil 7 are still at the top of the pile for me, and I would put Resident Evil 8 just underneath them. It is a good game, I enjoyed it to a degree, and I can see a lot of effort went into it, but it just doesn't live up to the hype it received or its predecessors. So that is my thoughts on the Resident Evil Village game, and let me know what you think of the game in the comments, and yeah, just let me know I'm wrong. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next one, guys.